You were saying it's amazing, and I didn't want to interrupt you.
I was saying that it's amazing because I think you and I have known each other for over 10 years now. And I think the first time I did your podcast, you came to my little apartment in Manhattan and we recorded one there. And I think that was in 2013. And here it is, 2023.
I think you might be right. It was either I'll have to go back and look because that video is still on my YouTube channel, and it was either 2013 or 2014. I remember we had some sort of contact before then. And yeah, I will check because it's coming up on 10 years. If it's not 10 years already, it is very, very close.
It's definitely, I think I want to say it was the fall of 2013. So probably almost exactly 10 years because I remember it was New York, it was cold out. It may have been early 2014. You might be right. It may have been like January or February, but it's just about 10 years. And here we both are after all this time,
I
still
know.
doing the thing.
Isn't that crazy? Especially because, you think about how many people get into the fitness industry and then like dip out immediately. Like my understanding, it's like 18 to 24 months, and you're already like a seasoned professional relative to the amount of time people spend in this industry.
Absolutely. You can survive 3 years, you're in a very, very small segment. And if you can do it like you and I have for over a decade, well, I don't know if that's good or bad, but here we still are doing the thing.
I think, yeah, exactly. I guess it remains to be seen, but I think I'm going to give it another decade or two just to be sure. I wouldn't want to make a rash decision and leave too soon.
I don't know what the heck else I would do.
That's the thing. I remember a number of years ago. Well, this has happened on two different occasions. Friends of mine who they're gym owners specifically. They've they've said, I've thought about like selling the gym and whatever. Like one of my friends said, yeah, I thought about selling the gym and then like moved to Kentucky because he has some family who lives there. And I was like, well, what would you do there? He's like, probably start a gym. So he just ended up staying where he was, which I think was a very smart idea on his part because his gym is one of the best I've ever been to for sure. Just like, and I think too, you know what, like, I'm sure you'll agree with me on this because you and I both agree the equipment is not the most necessary thing. There are some people who would disagree.
A
But
couple of things are nice, but you don't need much.
yeah, exactly. And his gym does now have so it has some pretty cool equipment because he's got like a guy there who runs their barbell and powerlifting program, and you see all these cool machines that people use for all these weird different like squat variations or whatever it may be. So they now have a lot of material. But the cool thing I think about his gym is the nature of the people who go there. It's not like a bunch of ruffians. They're people with like honor and values and stuff like that. So he and his crew have attracted a very good community, which I think is far more important than all the equipment in the world. You know what I mean?
Agreed. Especially for a fitness professional, making that community is what's going to make your business thrive or fail.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think about this too. I don't know what your response to this was, but I couldn't help but laugh, but also be a little annoyed during the height of the COVID. I was gonna say the plague that shall not be named, but might as well. I remember it was like all the gyms shut down, and suddenly all these people who had these videos, it's like this is a must-do exercise if you're serious about growing your quads, or you want like Arnold Schwarzenegger type pecs. You gotta use this, and it's like some super specialized 15, $20,000 machine that you can only find in like certain super expensive gyms. They're like, hey, I just released an at-home bodyweight program that you can do, like since all the gyms are shut down. It's like, oh, what calisthenics training wasn't good enough for you then, and now you need to turn a quick buck, and so you're gonna turn tail on all these super cool must-do exercises that just you had to have a gym membership for.
A lot of frauds were exposed during that debacle, but I don't
Yeah.
even know if we need to get into all that. But you know what?
No.
I know you said that you wanted this to be real. I am going to let the dog in the room because I hear her squealing in
Oh,
there.
sure, sure.
She's just going to come in here. Just give me 1 second. You can cut this out if you want because it's
No,
boring.
no worries. Yeah, go ahead and bring the dog in. Um, just a quick note to the people who are listening. Al got a new dog. He said there's a funny story behind how he acquired this dog, and I'm sure that we are going to be regaled with the story.
She's a big puppy. And
Yeah.
here she is,
Oh,
Goldie.
now that is a beautiful dog. I love golden retrievers.
Looks like somebody's about to ring my doorbell too, but I think they're like it looks like it's like a solicitor.
Uh-huh.
So I'm afraid I have to tell them to go away.
Okay. Okay. When Al comes back, I'm gonna make sure that I ask him about how he got the dog because it's not a tiny puppy, but it looks every bit as adorable as a puppy would. And then we'll have to see what this salesman was selling. Maybe it was solar panels.
I'll
Maybe
have to go away. But now the other dog's gonna bark, but she's all stirred up.
uh,
So
uh,
I'm sorry, Alex. You're gonna want to edit this out. I don't think anyone wants to listen to this, do they?
people love dogs and they love golden retrievers specifically. If they're anything like me, they have to love golden retrievers or they're not even allowed to listen to this
You're being
podcast.
a good sport.
Yes.
So anyway, so here's the deal with the dog.
Yeah, please.
So I don't know if you know this or not, but me and my wife split up a few
I
months
didn't
ago.
I did
And
not
I,
know
I
that.
don't want to dwell on that too much, but since that's a surprise to you, I want you to know that. My social media audience, some of them may know, some of them may not. I alluded to it briefly. I didn't want to make a big thing. I don't like to talk too much about my personal life.
Sure.
But anyway, so I'm dating this new lady. This is months old already, the
Okay.
breakup.
Okay.
And I haven't talked to her in a long time. And she found this dog just roaming around the neighborhood. And she sent me a picture, and I was like, that's actually a really cute dog. And we had two dogs. And one of the dogs, we're splitting everything 50-50. So I
Sure.
had this one dog, and I thought, maybe she could use a friend. And you know what? I could use a friend now too.
Sure.
And so we took her in. And of course, when you find a dog, you don't want to just take it in without doing your diligence. So we were trying to find the owner in various ways. And one of those ways was a Facebook post on a local group. And after I'd had the dog for about 5 days, somebody actually messaged and said, hey, that's my dog. And they had the papers and they had pictures with the dog and the whole thing. And it turns out the owner had been out of town and someone else was watching the dog.
Not
They,
closely, evidently.
so anyway, so the person tells me on the phone, I want to come get the dog. And I say, okay, I'm not going to keep someone's dog. It's their
Of course.
dog.
Of course.
So they come over. It's this fellow and his wife and their daughter. And they come up. I guess they see my house and they see I have another dog and that this dog is happy here. And they must have talked about it in the car ride over.
Mhm.
And they show up and the guy's like, it looks like you really like the dog. It looks like the dog's really happy here. I travel a lot for work. I don't know if I could keep the dog. Do you think you want to keep the dog? And you know what I said to him, Alex?
Tell
I
me.
said to him, I can't make that decision for you. It's your dog. Do you want to keep the dog? If you don't, I'd be happy to give her a home.
Yeah.
And he gave me the papers, and it's my dog officially now. So I feel really good about it. It's one of those like karmic things. If you want something, you set it free, it could come back to you. So this
Definitely.
is meant to be my dog.
That is absolutely the universe saying, Al, you need to have this dog. I mean, not just
Not
the
lying.
owner. Yeah, that. I don't think I've ever heard anything of that sort before, where somebody's like, "That's my dog. I want to reclaim it," and then they get there like, you know what? I don't want it that bad. You can have it.
I don't know if he initially brought the papers to show me to prove that it was his dog, or if
Yeah,
maybe he decided after we got off the phone before he even drove, you know what, I can't keep this dog.
yeah,
Yeah, apparently, then the lady who found the dog, she told me, she's like, oh yeah, I was kind of lecturing him on the phone a little bit when he first called about the ad. Like, how do you lose your dog? What do you do? And you got to be more responsible with your dog. And then maybe he thought about that, took it to heart a little bit because
yeah.
she's like a real dog person. And I'm becoming
Yeah.
one too now.
I love dogs. I had a dog. It wasn't a golden retriever, but it was like a Labrador retriever when I was a kid, and she was just like the best dog ever. Like they're the nicest dogs. They're like the archetypical dog, just loyal to a fault. Super chill. Look at her. Is it a she? Is it he?
Good girl. Yeah,
Yeah,
her name
she-
is Goldie.
Goldie. She's a very, very sweet dog. I hope
And
one day to visit and be able to play with her in the backyard. And
that would be so great, Alex. I would love that, and Goldie would love that. And yeah, that anytime you want, that would be wonderful.
I will be very happy to make it a point of doing that. I don't know when, but I will most certainly do that because it's been. I mean, you and I haven't hung out in person since 2019. I remember it was
Been a while. Been
yeah,
a long time.
yeah. I remember that was a fun time though. It was a very fun time. But I think now it sounds like in Florida you've got like a bit more space to roam around. It's not as you're not as stacked on top of everybody anymore. It
And my Brooklyn house for a Brooklyn house was pretty big.
was
You know,
awesome.
standards are different down here in rural Florida. But yeah,
Absolutely.
I got almost a whole acre of land and a big sprawling house and a big backyard with a gym that I'm sure you've seen online. And
Many a
life
time.
is really good, man. Everything is just what it needs to be right now, and it's just
Absolutely.
right.
And one thing I've noticed too, because I followed you since you moved to Florida and all this other stuff, and I've seen some of your recent pictures, and you're like as shredded as ever. I mean, like there's not an ounce of fat on you. And I think it's especially impressive because you always hear these people like, once you hit it depends on the age, it depends on the laziness level of the person, I think.
Depends
Like
on their age. It's whatever a year younger than their age is, right?
exactly. Well, you know what? People told me this all the time, like, once you hit your 30s, it's not so easy to do X, Y, and Z. I honest to goodness don't feel any older. It's weird for me to tell people my age, and I'm not like old, but it's like, it just you get so ingrained in your head, like, oh yeah, once you hit 30, it's all downhill from there. Once you hit 40, 50. I heard people like, yeah, once you hit 25, man, it's like it's like now was that the case for you because you didn't do anything and you just were lazy and unfocused,
Once
or
you stop taking care of yourself, things start falling apart.
yeah, if you
But
say
if you keep
exactly.
taking care of yourself, it would seem, at least so far for me and for other people I've observed, you could stay pretty healthy and fit well into your 50s, 60s, 70s, and even beyond.
Definitely. I think of guys like Robbie Robinson. He's this bodybuilder. I'm sure you've seen him on Instagram. I mean,
I get emails from someone pretending to be him.
what, to try to collaborate, or like an email list, or what?
Do you ever get these emails from people who are claiming that they're a big influencer and like, oh yeah, we want to do a collaboration, but it's a scam. It's like those ones that are like, we're going to run ads on your page and we're going to pay you $1,000 a day for
I
this.
got that yesterday, and I was like, "What is this foolishness?" Like, I've never even heard of this before. Like,
I get a lot of those kind of emails.
I look forward to the day that I get those emails, because to me, that's going to say that they're going to see me as like a much more influential figure than evidently I am, because I've never had somebody pretending to be a big influencer reach out and say, "Hey, let's collaborate." And of course, it's like,
Start up, because if it happens, don't fall for it. It's not
no,
really Robbie Robinson.
yes, I'm always very cautious about that because my Facebook, as you know, got hacked and deleted last year. And so now I'm like, oh, I was always on the lookout for it before, but now I'm like, it's like that reticular activating system. Like now I'm
Only
looking for it.
once, right? Shame on
Exactly.
you.
My friend Scott Stevens, he's the guy who kind of got me interested in the kettlebell kung fu, as I like to call it. The original guy who taught me all the kettlebell moves and stuff like that when I was just getting started out. He sent me a video, and the first thing I thought was, did he get hacked? Is this going to be like I'm going to click this and it's going to be
Gotta be
malware?
careful.
Yeah, but it wasn't. It was actually a funny video. So, you know,
Scammers out there every day.
exactly, exactly. Um, so yeah, I'm always on the lookout for that. But so far, have not heard from Robbie Robinson, Mike O'Hearn, or any of these other Jack dudes. But I think when I hear from at least a phony version of them, I'll know. Okay, I've made it, and now it's straight up from there, baby. Yeah, I'm gonna get a lot more of these. That means good things are happening. Just got to ignore these fools and go straight to the top.
No, I don't know if anyone ever really feels like they've made it, and even if you
Yeah.
do, that feeling doesn't last.
That's the sense I get, actually, because I look back and I'm like, oh my God, you're like, look how far I've gotten. And I don't feel like, I mean, I do feel like things have changed, things have gotten better. I've continued to improve. But yeah, I think if you're involved in doing what we do, where it's like a daily process, whether it's training, running a business, making content, whatever it may be, all of the things that you accomplish are happening at such an incremental level that you don't notice like a huge. It would take something like let's say a visit to Joe Rogan's podcast for you to really feel like there was a huge surge, because everything else is so, well, again, incremental. It's just bit by bit because you're doing it every single day.
But even that, even Joe Rogan, as popular as he is and as big as his audience is, one appearance on his thing, sure, you'd see a bump in your sales and whatever, but it wouldn't completely change your career forever unless you kept following up and hustling and making other things happen as a result. Because I mean,
Exactly.
right, he's got thousands of episodes by this point. more than half of the people he's out on, I don't know who the hell they are. Even
Yeah.
some of the fitness people he's out on, I wouldn't know who they are.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's very true. I think what is interesting though is I remember when Knees Over Toes guy went on his podcast. Now I had been following him from before, and this is not my hipster way of saying like, oh, I like Knees Over Toes guy before he was cool, but like
I did too, of course.
of course, we both did, because we like things before they're cool. We also listen to music nobody else listens to, and watch movies no one else listens to. But
But the
yeah,
Rogan appearance definitely catapulted him. But he had so much momentum already.
big time. Exactly. That's exactly the point, is that the momentum got him there, but the funny thing about that is I remember I was living in this apartment complex that had a gym attached to it. And it was like, I kid you not, a day, maybe 2 days after he was on there, I went to the gym and there were people doing like knees over toes stuff. And it was like, I thought it was cool because I think he's got really great information. He's a very smart guy. And I was glad that it was something like that as opposed to some weird, yeah, I don't know, like
I'd say he's more the exception than the rule.
big time, big time. Yeah, I think he's great. I think the other thing too is he like stays on message. He's like, it's the same thing over and over again. And that's not at all criticism. That's exactly what you need. There are so many people who think they gotta
Very consistent.
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard to not know, well, what does this guy do?
Really targeted. That's what's so important more than ever nowadays.
Yeah.
So that's part of why, my new program and my branding nowadays is more targeted specifically towards guys like me.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people out there to listen to. I want to speak to people who are my peers, people who I can really relate to and who can really relate to me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know what? And I think it's important too, because well, I mean, all the newbies, they're like, oh, I want to train athletes. It's like, you want to stay poor. That's a great way to do it, because most of them don't have that much money. And even if they do, it's like, you're not getting.
I thought that when I was new to the profession as well, for sure.
Yeah. I didn't actually, because I was never an athlete, and I was like, I don't want to be responsible for, walking
I
people.
don't think I realized how many regular people hired trainers when I got started. And to be fair, there were certainly fewer of them 20 years ago or 22 years ago than there are now.
Mm-hmm.
But there were more then than I thought there were.
Oh,
More
big
just
time.
regular people who want to have a trainer.
Yeah.
I think the big misconception that new trainers have is that the people who hire trainers are athletes and bodybuilders and models. And some of those people hire trainers, but mostly it's just your average slob who hires a trainer.
Certainly. Yeah. It's like that's the really important thing. Because I remember Mark Rifkind, who's is a retired master kettlebell instructor, said, like, how many more angels can you try to fit on the head of a pin? Like, if you're working on all this like really complicated stuff that's only going to work for like a tiny segment of a small fraction of this athletic community, you're completely ignoring the tens of millions of people who want and need training. And it doesn't need to be complicated, because they're at a level where all they need to do is they need to be shown the way, and you need to guide them, and you don't need to overcomplicate it. And I mean, and that's a guy who's been, again, he's been training for a couple of decades by now, for sure. Maybe 30, 40 years, something like that,
He's got at least a decade on me, and I'm getting up there myself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, well, and I'm sure too, that this is something that people who see you, they relate to you in some sense. Now, maybe they're not knocking off one arm chin ups in their mid 40s, and maybe they're not, doing all these other things, but they're saying, okay, this is a guy who's a dad, he's not just some influencer who's like, I'm going to make 10 videos today. And, like, you work with people, you're an actual like working trainer.
That's very important. And I'm glad that you know that and wanted to bring that up, because nowadays, as you know, a lot of fitness influencers are not working trainers. And, I try not to judge them one way or the other for it. It's just the industry has changed, and there are career opportunities that are different now than there were when I got started, or even when you got started. And that's a viable path for people to go down now. But there is something strange to me about the idea of someone potentially reaching hundreds of thousands or millions of people with fitness advice that hasn't really been vetted on actual clients. And sometimes it's good advice, and sometimes it's obvious, and I'm sure it's obvious to you too, that even though this person has a big following, they really are very green as a trainer.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's like, but this is important, I think, for trainers to keep in mind, is that more than anything, and by the way, I've seen this as I would say specifically with my Facebook post, because I do a daily Facebook post. And it used to be, as you probably remember, the golden days. You made a post and it was like, a couple dozen likes, maybe a couple hundred likes, and just tons and tons of shares. And now it's more or less, I would say maybe it's a little bit more honest now because it's a little bit more difficult to get attention. But like if I post something that is great, straight up information, really insightful, it's rare for it to get, all that much attention. But if I post something entertaining, even if it's irrelevant to fitness, like I posted a picture of me. I took a picture with Chaim Topol, who's like, this recently deceased Israeli actor who's super famous. He played Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof. I got like 120 likes, it was just like, oh, he just died. I wanted to just share this memory that I had and so on and so forth. People want to be able to relate to you. And I think one of the things these influencers understand is, number one, that people want to be entertained. And number two, they want this sense of like, I kind of know this guy, even though we've never met. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I don't see why you can't do it all. That's
I
what
agree.
I actually am an experienced trainer, and I want to give a quality presentation and be charming on screen. And I
Certainly.
also give simple, relevant information that people can apply that's going to hopefully make them want to find out more. But yeah, it's just the world is strange, and everybody's trying to do their thing, and everybody's got a niche, and everything is so specific nowadays. So
Mm-hmm.
I try to remember that those people, hopefully they're having a positive influence, even if some of the advice is not exactly the best. It's certainly a lot worse things they could be doing than telling people to try a workout that maybe isn't the best workout.
Yeah. The one thing I have to say, I have mixed feelings about it is on that note is, there are some influencers who are perhaps taking some sort of restoratives, maybe vitamin S, we might call it. And I don't have a problem with it personally because it's like, okay, you got to do what you got to do. If you're a fitness model, you're an athlete, that's what it takes to get ahead. The good thing is most of them are not encouraging other people to do that, but then they're selling programs that maybe that they themselves do, and it's at like intensity levels and volume levels that somebody who is not enhanced is simply not reasonably going to be able to attain.
Yeah, earlier about social media and posting like a long post with lots of good information. Yeah, times have changed. Blogs were really big when you and me got started, and I feel like a lot of your Facebook content is sort of like a blog post.
Yeah.
People's attention spans have shrunk, and you've got to we were talking about this last time, making hits and titles popping up on the screen and things like that, really trying to get the audience's attention. And it's certainly possible to do that without compromising anything about the message or the integrity behind what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think, and again, there are some great people out there doing that. You're a great example of this. Your brother just does an awesome job of it. We mentioned knees over toes guy. He's really an exception in the sense that he's massive, like millions of followers, and he does a great
Yeah,
job
his,
with
his
that.
advice is for the most part excellent.
Yeah, another good one would be Jordan Syatt. Yeah, he does some really good
Jordan,
stuff. Yeah,
yeah, I've been doing it for a long time too.
yeah. So it's possible. And one thing too that I like about Jordan is that I think he does stuff that kind of like what you do in the sense that you want to give people real information and you want to kind of separate the wheat from the chaff. Like you've got your shredded dad diet plan, which is I think very much in the same line where it's like you don't need supplements, you don't need super complicated tables to calculate your macros or whatever. It's like it's very very simple and you followed it and you're like a perfect example of it.
Something that Jordan does and that I do too, and we each do it in our own way, is the thing with any fitness advice, but especially diet advice, is it's not just about giving the advice. It's about giving it in a way that the person hearing it is going to want to and be able to actually apply it to their life, where they can process it and make sense of it in a way like, oh, I can do that if I think of it like this.
Yeah,
So it's all about choosing the words and choosing the message very carefully. And he's a great communicator. And I did a podcast with him in his New York City apartment right around the same time I first met you, like
oh
around
wow.
2013, 2014 or something like that. And he's done very well for himself. It's cool to see. I'm sure you've experienced this a lot in the industry. I certainly have. You meet somebody as they're coming up, and then they keep going up. And it's kind of cool to see that happen when somebody deserves it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember the first time I met him, it was in Israel, actually. He was doing it was a couple months there. He was learning Hebrew in kind of like a I want to say like a voluntary ulpan. Ulpan is like a kind of an intensive language course, and they're all voluntary, but in the sense that most people who go through them are going through them because they're moving there, and he just did it for fun. So similar to kind of my path when I did it. And I'd never heard of him. Pat Flynn introduced me to him because he was connected with Pat. Pat was like, "Oh, my friend
That's
Jordan's going to
someone
be
who introduced us as well.
he's a I don't know why we didn't mention him earlier. It's like he's the obvious one.
Sorry, Ben. It took us a half an hour to get to you, buddy.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Well, it's funny too, because I was just hanging out with him over the weekend. I was assisting at a strong on certification in Pennsylvania. And so he should have been top of mind, because I talk to him at least a couple times a week, I see him a couple times a year. And, for whatever reason, it just completely.
I think I'm due to be on his podcast again soon. So if you see this, Pat, let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, it was funny because I remember he was like, yeah, meet my friend Jordan. So we connected, we hung out a couple times. And in particular, I'd already heard of Gary Vaynerchuk at the time because I had, I think, two of his books.
Been very
And
popular for a long time.
yeah, and it wasn't, I don't think he was the shoe-in for Gary at the time because I think because Gary would like hired some,
This
he would do
was a
all these.
long time ago. Because
Yeah, yeah.
many years ago, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was, don't quote me, but I think it was like from 2016 to 2019. It's like Jordan's job was kind of like to shadow Gary anywhere he went so that he could put him through, training and make sure he watched his diet and stuff like that. And of course, he got, very handsomely rewarded for the work. But it was like,
That's the kind of job that every new trainer thinks they're going to get. Right?
yeah, exactly.
I've never had a client that good, and I've been doing it for a real long time. You've probably never had anyone like Gary, and you've been doing it for a real long time.
Yeah. I've
We'll
had
keep our fingers crossed. It might happen for us one day.
exactly. I have had it happen. Okay, I've had two clients who were kind of high rollers where it still wasn't exactly the same as the gig that Jordan got because that's really like a one in a million, kind of a gig. Um,
Sure.
yeah, when I lived in Jerusalem, I had a student who was a member of the Knesset or the Israeli Parliament, and he was also a PhD in philosophy from Columbia University. He is a venture capitalist, just super super high achiever. And in some sense, I guess it was maybe somewhat similar to what I would imagine training Gary was like. Because Pat was actually talking about this at the Strong On event. He said that Jordan, asked him, "Hey, do you want to do this or do you want to do that?" And he basically said, like, "Well, that's your problem. You've got to figure it out. I'm hiring you to teach me, so I trust you. So you think you take whatever path you think is going to be best." And I had to do something similar with this politician. But what was the difference was that many times like he'd be working till like 2 a.m. and I'd wake up in the morning, look at my phone, I'd get a WhatsApp message like, "Hey, just got back from the Knesset now. It's like 2:30 a.m." He's like, "I don't think, session tomorrow morning is going to happen." But nevertheless, he was still very dedicated. And then I have another, I don't want to say on again, off again client, but it's like wherever he goes, he likes to have a trainer who he can work with. And he goes to several places kind of pretty regularly. And so he's got a specific trainer that he works with when he's in Montreal, for instance, versus, I don't know, St. Louis. And so whenever he goes to Vegas, and I, at the time of this recording, living in Nebraska, he'll reach out and he'll be like, "Hey, are you going to be free to be in Vegas, during these times?" And so if I can make it, he'll fly me out. So he pays for and again, high roller. He's doing pretty well for himself. So he'll pay for the flight, pay for the hotel room. And it's usually like, I'll get my own hotel room in like the Palazzo or the Venetian or something like that. And so my job then is to make sure that he's eating properly, make sure that he's exercising. And so that would be the closest, but it's not the same as like, Jordan working with
Right,
Gary.
the short term.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I've had a handful of those type of things, but always short term, always a week or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. And the other thing is it is fun, but I remember thinking about this, like, if Gary asked me to do something like that, like, I don't think I could do it, partially because I wasn't
I
like
don't think Jordan would do it himself at this point. He's got a little kid now. I couldn't do that now. There was, when you don't have kids, it's a whole different world.
Yeah. For me, I looked at it like that. I was like, okay, and Jordan, I think, was in maybe in his late 20s at the time. So it's like if I were in my late 20s, I'd be like, yeah, sure,
That's
this
the
is
time to do it. Yeah, that's exactly when you want a job like that.
exactly. But now, I'm in my 30s and I want to get married and have kids, and it's like you don't want to tether yourself to a job that, as cool as it may be, that's going to just force you to kind of kick the can down the road further when it's just not a part of where the path you see your life going. You know what I mean?
Do you want to get married?
I do, very much so. Not in Nebraska. I'm planning on moving back to Israel, where it's been my experience. It's far easier to meet women and uh, you know get numbers. It's almost like ridiculous how much easier it is for me there versus Nebraska, where most of the women who would be interesting are either already married or whatever the case may be. And yeah, whereas every time I go to Israel, it's just like you know randomly meet a gal, chat her up.
Yeah, Alex.
Was that?
Said, why haven't you married one of them yet? I sound like one of your relatives, probably.
Yes. Well, uh,
Everybody here, come on, Alex, you're 30 something years
I,
old.
well,
Congrats.
the
Go.
yeah, the answer to that is just because I've been in a long distance relationship before, and it was like, it was a little bit too challenging for me, and yeah, I want to actually be there so I can spend some time with the gal, but yeah, my plan is to move back very shortly. I'm currently just waiting on my Israeli passport to come back. Couple of other minor steps, and before the end of the year, I'm going to be there. So I'm going to speed up the process a little bit. But that's the short answer. And I actually wanted to go back a few years ago, but of course it was not. It was a really inopportune time, let's say, because you go there and you couldn't go anywhere. It was like everybody was kind of quarantined, and there
Yeah,
was
not a good time for travel.
exactly, and yeah. So in any case, my that was a case where again, like life just kind of kicked the can down the road for me, and I didn't have any real choice in the matter. It was like I'm not going to pack my bags and then be quarantined in an apartment for 2 weeks, and then like without leaving, and then you get like minimally allowed to leave just depending on the time or the rules or what have
You
you.
made the right call. Yeah, you made the right call.
Yeah, but that's the answer. In fact, it was certainly not me being lazy or dragging my feet. It's funny because I was thinking actually I think it was like in August of 2021. I was planning on going, and then they had just passed this new rule, which was like, you would arrive at no matter what, you're gonna have to quarantine for 10 days, and it's like, if I'm going to go there it's like I'm probably going to go for like 2 weeks.
That's
So
dumb. It
yeah,
doesn't make any sense.
exactly.
I
It
don't even
was
want to talk about it. It's so stupid.
yeah, it was just like embarrassingly dumb. So I was like, you know what? Like I didn't know what to do. Actually, I was
I want
thinking
to put
maybe
the whole thing behind me. I
yeah,
really do.
yeah,
So many people are still so angry about it, and I get it. I do. But I
yeah,
just want to move on.
exactly. I'm with you. Um, but yeah, that's the kind of the more in-depth answer as to why I have not done it already. But suffice it to say, it's funny because again,
I got to tell you, I haven't gotten cynical. I believe in love. I
good,
believe marriage is a beautiful thing. I believe in making that commitment to somebody and seeing it through good times and in bad.
certainly.
I just have two ex-wives who feel differently.
You have two now?
This is my second. Yeah.
I I didn't realize you were married before. I remember you had I remember when we were talking about this before you met Grace, there was some other gal before.
I've had a lot of girlfriends over the years, and two of them I married. And I'm not cynical.
Sure, that's great.
I got a new gal I'm seeing, and I like her, and I'm trying to just enjoy it and not worry about where it goes.
No, it's fantastic. I think that's what you got to do. You got to live in the moment.
I got a beautiful child who I love, and her mother will always be very special to me
Of course.
because we made this kid together. She's the
Absolutely.
best thing that's happened in my life. My kid.
Absolutely. I think it's good not to be cynical. It's very easy to get cynical after you get your heart broken or after some sort of a difficult situation like that.
But it's one of those things. In the beginning, obviously, it was very difficult and sad. But it was not something that I really wanted to talk about in my social media life. It's my personal life. But because I did involve her in my brand a lot, I
Hmm.
kind of did ultimately feel like I had to address it just to kind of close the door and move on. So I did make one post about it, but that was even after the breakup was already done and she'd moved out and we'd kind of both moved on. And then I felt like, all right, I can kind of talk about this now. And now I'm talking about it on this podcast with you publicly. But I mostly just feel like I'm talking to you like my friend. That's
Of
what I like
course.
about things with you. And it really is okay and for the best. And everybody's happier. And it takes a little time for that to settle in.
Of
But
course.
now that it has, man, I've never been happier than I am right now. I got everything just exactly perfect. And I
That's
know it's
amazing.
not going to last like this because life is always changing and things go in unexpected ways. But for as long as it stays like this, and I got this new dog in my life, and all these new things have come in and other things have gone out, and it's like, wow, everything is, like we were saying, you and me, we did the first one of these about 10 years ago, and
Mhm.
so much hasn't changed. We're both
Yeah.
still trainers, we're both still doing the online thing. You're still doing the podcast, I'm still coming on your podcast. But so much has changed. I
So
live in Florida
much.
now. I got a kid. I'm 44 years old, and I'm more shredded than I've ever been in my entire life. To go back to what you were saying earlier, Florida life has been good for me. I've been getting a lot of sunshine, been eating really good. Because here's the thing about living in New York, is I loved New York. It was great for me for that time in my life. I lived in New York for most of my life up until I moved here, not even 2 years ago yet.
Hmm.
And New York has so much to offer, so much culture, so much amazing food. But there's a lot of temptation when there's pizza and bagels and lots of yummy things to eat all the time. Like
Yeah.
here, I hardly ever eat out because there's not really a lot of good places to eat out.
Yeah.
There's like three good restaurants within like a half hour of where I live. And I go maybe once every other week, I'll go to eat out. And I'm just preparing all my food at home and putting more time into it. And I got a bigger kitchen, nicer stuff. And it's just, especially having a kid, like I'm trying to be a good role model for her with eating healthy and teaching her about nutrition and stuff. So I've just been really, really focused on that. And it's been great. It's all fallen into place.
Yeah. That's a key too, is a lot of people, I think anybody who is lean and who is shredded, if you ask them, like, if there's one thing that pretty much everybody agrees, and there's probably a couple things, but if there's at least one, it's that you have to be involved in your food preparation. It's like it can't just be I go to a restaurant, I pick something up, on the way home, even from Whole Foods. It's like Whole Foods, great, but you know,
Garbage it up at that bar. If you buy your own ingredients, if you buy Whole Foods and make your own thing, it's good. But if you go to the salad bar at Whole Foods, those aren't Whole Foods you're eating. It's filled
yeah,
with weird synthetic oils and questionable ingredients of all kinds.
yeah, yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think, and of course, it's also super expensive. Whereas you could get the same quality in many cases just by going
Great
some.
thing about living here in Ocala, Florida versus New York. The fanciest, nicest supermarket here would be cheap by New York standards.
Oh yeah,
So I can get good grass fed steak for like $10 a pound. So I can eat steak for dinner pretty much every night if I want.
it's incredible. Yeah, that's one thing I love New York for all the reasons that you described earlier. There's just something about it. It's like no other city in the world. But
The energy is magical.
yeah, I couldn't live there though. I just
I couldn't anymore.
yeah,
I did for a lot of years and I liked it for most of the time I was there. Toward the end, I stopped liking it, which is why I ultimately left.
yeah,
It's also, I don't think I really ever fully acknowledged how beneficial sunlight is. And I get so much more of it here than I got in New York.
yeah.
And I feel like my skin looks better. There's less pollutants here in the air. And I just feel so good and so energized and so inside, just feeling at peace and happy with every aspect of my life.
Couldn't ask for a better outcome than that. That is fantastic.
We'll see how long it lasts. I got this tattoo on my throat I've had for a long time that says nothing lasts forever. So when things are good, you appreciate them. And when things aren't so good, you remind yourself this is going to pass and I'm going to be okay.
Yeah. On that note, I remember once I went into a wing stop and I saw a gal with a tattoo in Hebrew and it said Gamze Ya'avo, which means this too shall pass. And I was like, I like your tattoo. And I didn't ask her, like, do you know what it means? Because it's sort of like insulting. Like I just got my, what's that?
Presumably she did if she had it tattooed on her, right? Is that what you're saying?
I hope so. Yeah, but it was also like she's handling my food, and I don't want to like insult her. And the next thing you know, it's like,
Well,
I'm
I
not
mean, it
saying,
might be insulting because to imply that someone would get a tattoo of a phrase that they didn't know what it meant is kind of an insulting insinuation.
well, I'll tell you
And yet
what.
it happens.
It
It happens.
on the exact same note, there was a guy I've seen because I used to take walks around this trail near where I lived, and there was a guy with two Hebrew tattoos. One of them was correct. One of them was a Google Translate f up, let's say.
Yeah, it happens. It
Yeah,
happens.
yeah, and I didn't tell him because it's like it's not going to accomplish anything. It was I noticed. I knew exactly what he's going for because Hebrew is a very different language from English. One of the tattoos, the correct one, said Shomer Achi, which means my brother's keeper, which is a very famous line in the book of Genesis. And then the other one said Harpu, which I guarantee you his intent was be calm or relax, but in Hebrew it's transitive, meaning like to relax your hand, for like to physically make something relax or release. And I didn't tell him because both times I saw him, I just was like, I don't want to do this to the guy. You know what I
Well,
mean?
you know something, Alex? I have a lot of tattoos, and some of them are of words, but they're
Mhm.
all in English because that's the language I speak.
Yeah.
And it's always seemed odd to me that someone would get a tattoo of a phrase in a language that they didn't speak. And if they did, you'd think it was at least be like a famous phrase or a phrase that everybody knows or something like that.
Yeah.
But to pick something that isn't even an expression in that language seems like a
Yeah.
strange choice.
Yeah. It's such a, I mean, you said nothing
Like if you
lasts for
got a tattoo that said like Amor Fati or something like that, everyone knows that's a famous expression.
sure. Exactly. Exactly. And that's the thing. It's like there's some of them you don't need to do a lot of checking up on. Others, it's like, dude, you're going to spend a couple $100s on the tattoo. What's an extra 50 to go on Fiverr and be like, hey, is this the correct way to say this? Because this is what I wanted to
Get
say.
it in English. Like why? Anyway, yeah, no, people do things that they do. I do weird things too. I try whenever I find myself being critical of someone for a choice I don't understand, try to remind myself that I've made some choices that other people might not understand. And then I try to forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Exactly. Speaking of very famous lines from the Bible, that's another very good one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not religious, but I do think there are a lot of good teachings in these religions, as people are calling them.
yes, exactly. This newfangled religion, this religion word they like to toss around.
So
Yeah,
interesting life philosophies peppered in there.
100%, 100%. Well, before we say sayonara, which is of course a word in a language neither of us speaks. Um, I want to hear a little bit more about the Shredded Dad plan and tell us all about it because I've had a chance to go through it. It's pretty weighty, but it's easy reading at the same time, and I would encourage everybody to go get it.
Well, I really wanted to be thorough, and probably anyone who's listening by this point knows I have a lot of fitness books. But this is the first thing I've ever written about diet. And it's something that people have asked me about for many, many years. And I've had a lot of thoughts about and gotten a lot of questions about. So I wanted to be really thorough and comprehensive with this thing and really answer and address everything that everyone's ever asked me. And this seemed like the time to do it because I've personally been more focused on my diet than ever. And
Mhm.
I've been getting good results from the things that I've been doing. And I've done a lot of my own trials and errors. And, nowadays, and this is something I talk about in the book, like you really got to see for yourself because there's so much conflicting information out there from verifiable experts who have credentials who are saying opposite things. So you really it's a challenge, but you've got to go inside and go with your intuition at a certain point. And that's what I'm encouraging people to do, to tap back into their natural and primal instincts when it comes to food. And of course, giving a little bit more specific guidance in that. Like you were saying, there's specific recipes and specific, eat this for lunch, eat this for dinner, eat this, very clear. This is the 7 days, this is the next 7 days. Because people really sometimes need to have it laid out for them in a completely, I think you said earlier when you were talking about was it Gary Vaynerchuk had said to his trainer Jordan, like, I don't want to have to think about this stuff, just
Yeah.
tell me what to do. And that's what I had in mind. So the book, for people who want to read the whole thing, the ebook's 135 pages. And there's more than 30 minutes of exclusive video plus a bunch of bonus videos with it. So it really dives in pretty deep to the content. But for people who don't want to have to absorb all that, it's set up on a platform that makes it really easy to look through and be like, oh, I want to watch this video. This one's interesting to me. Oh, you know what? Maybe I'll skip that one. Ooh, these ones about, preparing food. This is what I need to watch. So everyone can kind of, watch as much as they feel they need. And it's hopefully going to help a lot of people. I just released it a few days ago, and the initial reaction has been really good so far. But the nature of these programs is that it takes time to really see what is going to, stand the test of time.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one thing, as of the time of this recording, we're in October, and I'm looking forward to diving deep into it so that by Halloween time, I can be Shreddy Krueger. You know what I'm saying?
Ah, I see what you did there.
Absolutely.
You're pretty lean already. So if you really buckle down for a few weeks, you could get super, super lean. But you're pretty much, I think, already embodying most of the advice in this program. And It's for
Definitely.
people who, in many cases, know what they need to be doing, but need somebody to guide the process, hold them accountable, and persuade them a little bit. You have to remind yourself throughout the day. That's what makes dieting so different than working out,
Yeah.
right? Working out, you do it. If hopefully you do it early in the day, it's done. You don't have to think about it anymore, at least not for a day or two.
Yeah.
But the diet, it's always there. There's always food. There's always temptation. So you need some sort of tether to look to, a lighthouse, if you will. And I want to be that for people.
I think they will be very, very pleased because it is very straightforward, very direct, very simple to follow, and none of the jargon and mumbo jumbo that has become so emblematic of many in the fitness industry.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I hope it inspires people. I want people to look at me and be like, man, if this guy can do it, I can do it. And that's always been a big thing with my career, and my messaging is trying to, like we were talking about earlier, distill a lot of the mysticism about this stuff. And
Yeah.
it's simple. It's not that complicated. I'm not special. I'm just a regular guy, and I'm able to do this. So you don't have to be special either. Anyone who's a regular guy, don't make an excuse. You can do it, but you've got to you've got to do a little bit of work. It's not so
Absolutely.
bad.
Absolutely. Well, very cool. I would love to keep chatting. Got to run, but folks, check it out. I'm going to include a link in the description for you to check out the Shredded Dad diet. You too can become Shreddy Krueger, or I didn't come up with any other ones than that. That was the only one I had in the tank. But anything with the word shred or peeled or lean, just create some sort of like a pun or a play on words. You can become that too. Al will lead the way. Al, thank you again for coming back on the show.
My pleasure. Hey, we're working out.
Oh, yeah. And folks, as always, have fun and happy training.